You don't have the head for business, Linnea. This is Mercy. My mother said it with the voice she used at church charity dinners. Polished, warm at the surface, mean underneath. She was standing in the middle of my Brooklyn office on a Friday afternoon, holding the keycard to my corner office in one hand and my sister's elbow in the other. 2 movers from Greenwich stood behind her with empty boxes. My team, 6 people I had paid for 9 years, froze where they were. My sister Saskia sat down in my chair. She opened my top drawer and slid my chemistry notebook to the edge of the desk like she was clearing out an old tenant. I did not slam a door. I did not raise my voice. I closed my MacBook, picked up my coat, and walked past my mother into the elevator. 3 weeks from a launch they thought was already theirs. They did not know whose name was on the paper. If your jaw just tightened, take a second to like and subscribe. This story only gets sharper from here. Drop your location and local time in the comments. I love knowing where in the world you're listening from. I'm Linnea Voss, 34, founder and chief formulator of a brand my mother had spent 9 years claiming for the neighbors. Let's go back to a Tuesday in May, 8 weeks before that Friday. To a kitchen in Cobble Hill, a patent grant from Washington, and the email that decided everything. Isiu, ihisha. 8 weeks before my mother handed my office to my sister, I was barefoot in my own kitchen, stirring a peptide carrier at 1 in the morning. The brownstone on Court Street was quiet the way only old Brooklyn houses get quiet. The radiator ticked. The third-floor pipes hummed. My burner phone, the one only Geraldine and Solange had, buzzed against the marble counter. Geraldine, my lab partner in Jersey City, almost never called past midnight. When she did, it was always good news, which made the timing worse, because good news in our business is almost always the start of trouble. It's granted, she said. No hello. 12201, 915, stabilizer. I set down the spatula. The second patent. 2 years of bench work, 6 months of arguments with the examiner, 4 reformulations to thread the prior art. Mine. My name on the front page. Floria Beauty as exclusive licensee on the cover sheet. I closed my eyes and held the marble edge for a second to keep my hands steady. Thank you, Jur, I said. Sleep, Linnea. I'll try. I did not try. I sat on the floor of my kitchen for a long time and looked at the bottle in front of me. A little brown glass jar with no label yet. 9 years of working past midnight. 9 years of pouring serum into clean rooms while my sister posted yoga reels from her parents' guest room. 9 years of letting my mother tell hairdressers in Greenwich that Florea was her family's pretty little thing. I had let her. The brand was not made out of the talking. The brand was made out of the silence around it. At 6 in the morning, I drove the Lincoln Tunnel to the lab and worked through breakfast. By 10, I had a confirmation from Catherine Halsey at Sephora Corporate, the SVP of merchandising, that the expanded master vendor agreement was countersigned. 320 doors, end cap display for 12 weeks, a flagship slot on Madison Avenue if I wanted it. I read the email twice, and then I read the clause my own lawyer had insisted Sephora accept. Section 9.3, Sole Founder Continuity. 3 sentences. They protected me from anyone, including my own family, trying to climb on top of what I had built. I forwarded the agreement to nobody. Not Solange, not Geraldine. Some things you hold quietly until you understand what you are going to do with them. At noon, my mother texted. The message was short. Sunday dinner. Have something to say. My mother only sent that text when she had already decided. The other 42 Sunday dinners of the year she announced casually. Kale on the side, we're using the good plates. The decisive ones came in 5 words. The first time I saw that pattern, I was 19, and the dinner had been about Saskia transferring to Vassar on the family's money. The second time, I was 26. And the dinner had been about my parents helping Saskia with a wedding I was not invited to attend the rehearsal of. there were others. Each one was a verdict pretending to be a meal. I texted back, "Working. I'll come if I can." And I drove back to Brooklyn through the lunch traffic and parked outside the Dumbo office and stood on the sidewalk for 90 seconds before I went up. Solange had pulled the new packaging mock-ups for the Sephora end cap. Geraldine had sent a sample box for the new transdermal serum. The corner office had natural light from the river, a small workbench by the window where I formulated, a clean glass desk, no decorations except a single photo of Cornell's lab from the year I graduated. That desk had been mine for 5 years. That night, I did the thing every founder eventually does and almost no founder admits to. I opened my contracts folder. I read every active clause. I made a column on a yellow legal pad and wrote, "What happens if I have to disappear?" The column filled itself. 90 minutes later, I had a 1-page protocol. 3 columns wide, 12 rows deep. Continuity notice templates, MFA rotation, vendor escalation paths, lab partner handoff, payroll lockbox. I capped my pen. I labeled the page across the top in pencil. In case my mother shows up, I should have read her text more carefully. Mothers in our family only warn when they have already decided. People love to ask founders the same question. When did you know you wanted to start something? The honest answer is that no one in my family asked me anything that resembled that question, ever. They asked me other things. Why are you crying? You're embarrassing your sister. Why are you reading at the table? Your sister wants to talk. Why are your hands always greasy? That smell is in the curtains. I was 5 the first time I made perfume in my mother's sink. I had stolen Bath & Body Works lotion and lavender from my grandmother's garden, and a teaspoon of olive oil. My mother walked in and laughed, but it was not the warm kind of laugh. "Saskia is the pretty one," she told my father over her shoulder, like I was not there. "Make her some little bottles, Linnea. Be useful." I made her bottles. I always made her bottles. Even at 5, I learned the family's first rule. My hands were for serving the prettier one. In 7th grade, I won the New York State Junior Chemistry Olympiad. My sister won Greenwich Junior Miss the same month. My mother bought a frame for Saskia's photograph and hung it over the staircase. My Olympiad medal stayed in a kitchen drawer between expired coupons until I moved it to my dorm at Cornell 6 years later. When I left for college, my mother told the neighbors I was going up there to find a husband. The air is fresher. She never used the word chemistry out loud in my life. Not once. Senior year of high school, I built a science fair project on transdermal delivery rates. I worked on it for 8 months in a closet I had cleared above the garage. 2 weeks before regionals, my sister asked to borrow my notebook for inspiration. I let her. She submitted a different fair project about the science of Pilates breathing. On the page where she listed her sources, she had written my name in her own handwriting at the bottom, but she had spelled it Linnea. My mother thought it was sweet. The notebook came back with 3 pages torn out. The summer between freshman and sophomore year at Cornell, during finals week, my mother called me at the dorm at 3 in the afternoon. She wanted me to ship lab-grade peptides home for Saskia, who had decided that morning to launch a skincare line. I told her I did not have access to lab-grade anything as an undergraduate. I told her even if I did, I could not ship a controlled compound across state lines to my sister. My mother said, "Don't be difficult, you're embarrassing your sister." Saskia did not launch a skincare line that summer. She launched a podcast about anxiety. The podcast had 2 episodes. The second one was an interview with the man who would eventually be her ex-husband. Cornell graduation. My father missed it because Saskia had a podcast launch in Brooklyn that afternoon. He texted me from the green room of someone else's celebration. "Tell us how it went. Bring leftovers home." I did not. I drove home alone in a borrowed Honda Civic with my BS chemistry diploma on the passenger seat. I let it slide off into the footwell when I took a curve too fast on the Sawmill Parkway, and I did not pick it up until I got to Greenwich. Estee Lauder hired me as a junior chemist that summer. I worked 70-hour weeks for 2 years and saved every check that was not rent. In May of 2015, late, after a particularly bad Sunday in Greenwich, where my mother had announced Saskia was going to be a wellness curator, I came home to my apartment in Long Island City, took the saucepan off the stove, and stirred the first stable hyaluronic complex Florea would ever sell. That night, I named the company Florea, because in Latin it meant the flowering one. I told my mother nothing. I told her the second month. I made the mistake of bringing the first samples to Sunday dinner. She smelled the jar, said, "Oh, sweetie, it's so nice you have a hobby," and within 3 weeks she had given a jar each to 9 women at St. Catherine's. By the end of the summer, she had taken $28 apiece from those women and put the money in her own household account. I learned about it from a neighbor whose daughter had asked her where she could buy Marlene's daughter's little lotion. I called my mother that night. "Mom, you can't sell my product without telling me. Those bottles aren't tested for retail volume. I am introducing you, Linnea. You should be grateful. The neighbors think you are entrepreneurial." She kept the cash. I made her sign a sheet acknowledging she had sold 23 jars at $28 each. I kept the sheet. I kept everything. The first rule I learned from chemistry is also the first rule for surviving my family. Write everything down. Label everything twice. Never trust an unlabeled jar. In 2017, I asked to use the garage for 6 months while I waited for my Brooklyn lease. My mother said yes. 6 months later, when I moved everything out, she sent me a retroactive rent invoice for $14,000. I paid it. I kept the receipt. In 2020, when Saskia got laid off from her influencer agency, my mother told me, not asked, that Florea was now going to give Saskia a creative consultant role at $9,000 a month, cash, paid in full at the end of each month. Saskia worked 3 months. She opened her work email twice. The first time she sent a thumbs-up emoji to a vendor question about freight. The second time, she asked me if our brand voice was more witchy or more boss babe. I paid her every cent. I kept every direct deposit receipt. In 2023, when Saskia's marriage ended and she moved back into the guest room in Greenwich, my mother announced over Thanksgiving turkey, in front of my father and a cousin and the neighbor I had been polite to since I was 6, that Linnea is going to hand Florea to Saskia one day. Saskia just needs a little step up. That's the family plan. My sister stared at me across the candied yams. I smiled. My father studied his plate. I kept the napkin I had written notes on, because I had started taking notes at Thanksgiving the way I took notes in the lab. That year, for Christmas, my mother gave Saskia a custom embroidered sweater that read, "Future CEO." She gave me a tin of homemade cookies and a card that said, "Thanks for everything you do for this family." I drove home and made the second patent application that night. The summer Saskia got married, the year was 2021. The ceremony was at a vineyard in Stamford. The dress code was the kind that Greenwich women understand at a glance, and I never bothered to. I drove up the afternoon of the rehearsal with a bottle of the first solid serum we had ever shipped, wrapped as a gift. I knocked on the bridal suite. My mother opened the door. She held the door at a 1-foot gap and stared at me. "You can't be in here, Linnea. The wedding planner has a list. You're not on it." "Mom, I'm her sister. There are family members and there is the wedding party." "You are family. The wedding party is in here. You're at table 14 tomorrow." She closed the door. I drove back to Brooklyn. I dropped the serum at a customer in Riverdale on the way home, a woman whose husband had cancer, who I had been refilling weekly at cost. I gave her the gift instead. She cried. She said no one had brought her something pretty in a year. I sat in her kitchen for 40 minutes. She made me tea. I did not go back to the wedding the next day. My mother told the cousins I had come down with something. I had come down with something. Her. For 9 years I had translated my mother's contempt into chemistry. I had thought the work would speak. The work does not speak. The work is taken. Friday, the 27th of June, 3:52 in the afternoon. The Dumbo office. Solange and I were at the bench by the river-facing window, testing a new gel hyaluronic blend against the production batch. Geraldine was on the speakerphone from Jersey. Our intern Whitney was on the floor in the prep room labeling sample boxes. 2 of the marketing team were at their laptops by the kitchenette. The office smelled like fresh paper and rose hexal and good coffee. The freight door beeped. The freight door was never used on Fridays. Solange looked up first. My mother walked in. She was wearing a cream blazer and her hair was set. Saskia came behind her in white linen. Behind Saskia came 2 men in matching navy polos with the Greenwich Moving Company logo on the chest, pushing empty file boxes on dollies. The dollies squeaked across our concrete floor. I did not move. Geraldine's voice went silent through the speakerphone. "Hello, team," my mother said. She raised her voice slightly the way she did at the church board. "I want to reintroduce, my older daughter. Effective Monday, Saskia is taking the founder's chair at Florea. The transition is going to be smooth and warm. There is going to be lots of growth." She turned to me. "Linnea, sweetheart, you're going to move to the small workstation near client services. That feels much more like you anyway." She walked to my corner office, opened the door, and held the keycard up like a teacher with a gold star. "Saskia, honey, go ahead." Saskia walked past me without looking at me. She sat in my chair. She slid my chemistry notebook to the edge of the desk. She pulled the lower drawer open and put a small pink leather makeup case inside. She crossed her legs. She turned to my mother and smiled like a child at a school play. The room was so quiet I could hear the river through the window. Solange was holding the gel pipette out from her like it had stopped existing. The 2 marketing leads were frozen at their laptops. Whitney, the intern, was standing in the prep room doorway with both hands pressed to her mouth. My mother turned to me again. Her smile widened the way it did at fundraisers. "You don't have the head for business, Linnea. This is mercy." I counted. 11 seconds. I closed my MacBook. I unplugged my charger and wound the cord around it the way I always did. I picked up my coat. I walked past the riverside bench. I walked past Solange and rested my hand on her shoulder for 1 second, the lightest tap. Because Solange's eyes had begun to redden, and one of us in this room had to keep things small. I walked past my mother. She put a hand on my forearm. "Did you have anything to say?" she asked. No, I did not look at Saskia. I did not look at the movers. I rode the elevator down to the lobby alone. I asked the doorman for the time. He told me. I thanked him. I tipped him $5 because the doorman had 2 kids, and I always tipped him on Fridays. And Friday was Friday, no matter what my family had decided to be that afternoon. I stepped onto J Street and ordered an Uber. In the back of the car, I opened my notes app and typed 2 words: continuity protocol. I underlined them by holding the cursor still for half a second. I did not cry. I did not call anyone. I watched the Manhattan Bridge slide past the window. The bridge had been there for 120 years. It would still be there Monday. So would I. A door slammed is a door my mother gets to describe afterward. You should have seen her, completely lost it, made a scene. I had spent 34 years in a house where the only authentic reaction was the one she could narrate later. I was not giving her that. I was giving her something else. I was giving her a door she would have to walk into. If you've ever had a parent introduce someone else into the life you built without asking, drop a single word in the comments. Built. That is all. I want to know how many of us are out there. And if you're new to this channel, subscribe. I tell one of these every Tuesday, and the next one is darker than this. Gi and Win. Saturday morning, 6:14, Cobble Hill. The kitchen smelled like the coffee I had ground 2 minutes earlier, and the small lab fridge in the pantry hummed under the floorboards. I had not slept. I opened a notebook to a blank page. I wrote across the top in red ink. Florea Beauty LLC. Single member, sole authorized signatory, Linnea Voss. I underlined it twice. Then I started the protocol. 6 rows. 1. Shopify plus admin. I logged in with my YubiKey. I created a sandbox admin tier for Solange and assigned the production storefront to read-only for everyone else. I rotated my YubiKey. The Shopify support email. A real human named Caleb, who had been on Florea's vendor file since 2018, got a quiet flag from me. Founder transition pending review. Do not authorize any new admin ad. Per section 9.3. 2. Stripe Atlas. I rotated root credentials. I added Geraldine as backup financial admin with 2-factor on her personal device. I removed 2 seats from old contractors I had been meaning to remove for months and never had time to. 3. A WS root account. I cycled the access key. I locked the IAM admin role to me only. I set up a CloudWatch alarm to notify me by SMS every time anyone attempted to log in to root from a new device. 4. Clavio and Gorgias. I set my account to single seat for the founder tier. I locked the email send domain and renamed every automation that mentioned anyone else by name. 5. Shopify Customer DB. I downloaded a clean export and walked the laptop into my safe in the second-floor closet. The safe was bolted to a beam. I took the export off the laptop and put the laptop back to work. 6. ShipBob 3PL. I called the after-hours line. I spoke to a supervisor named Pamela. I asked her to freeze the authorized signatory ledger. I asked her to require dual confirmation on any new authorized contact. Pamela said, of course, Mrs. Voss, and read me back the clause from our master service agreement that protected exactly that. I thanked her. I tipped Pamela with a kind email to her supervisor. It was 11 by the time I finished. The buzzer rang. Geraldine was on the stoop in jeans and a Rutgers sweatshirt, holding a manila envelope and a tray of chocolate croissants from the bakery on Smith Street. I let her in. She set the croissants on the counter. She set the envelope on top of the croissants. She looked at me. Read it, she said. I have known since January. I needed you to ask before I told you. I sat down. I opened the envelope. The email at the top was from Saskia's personal Gmail to a procurement director at Aphelion Beauty, dated November of the previous year. The subject line read, Peptide Carrier Matrix, Consulting Availability. The body of the email read like a beauty influencer trying very hard to sound like a chemist. The attachment was a 6-page PDF. The first paragraph quoted directly from my patent application, the one that had not yet been granted in November but had been published. The page header on the attachment read, U.S. Patent Application 12/143-608. My name was on every page of the application. My sister had copied the diagrams without changing them. I read all 6 pages. I read the email chain after. Aphelion politely declining, asking if Saskia had clear license. Saskia replying that yes, she had family ownership stake in the formulator. Aphelion declining again, more firmly. I closed the envelope. I looked at Geraldine. Why January? Because Aphelion's compliance officer is a friend of mine from grad school. She forwarded me the file the day they decided not to pursue. She thought I should know. I sat on it because if I told you in January, you would have called my friend a witness, brought legal, scorched the earth, and lost the Sephora rollout in the noise. You needed the rollout to be locked first. You needed it to be on paper. I nodded once. I tapped the envelope with 2 fingers. Saturday at 4, I'm sending continuity notices. 12 accounts. Standard 9.3 language. Send them. I sent them. 12 clients. Sephora, Blue Mercury, Credo, Saks, Nordstrom Beauty, 4 small luxury hoteliers, the lab partnership with Penn Pharmacy, a Madison Avenue dermatology group, and the export distributor that ran our United Kingdom orders. The letter was 8 sentences long. It said that per Section 9.3 of the Master Agreement on file, founder leadership had not changed, and any communication purporting otherwise should be disregarded. It said to contact me directly, and it gave them my private founder line. Sunday, I drafted the addendum to the Madison Avenue flagship lease, holding my name as the sole authorized signatory. I emailed my real estate attorney. I asked him to add a sole founder clause. He did, within an hour, and added a paragraph I had not asked for, which said that no co-signers, family members, or assignees could be added without his counter-notarized approval. Belt and suspenders, Linnea, his email said. Glad you finally let me do this. By Sunday night, the continuity notices were already producing replies. The dermatology group on Madison wrote back inside 40 minutes. Acknowledged, the relationship is with you. Please tell us where to send the renewal. Blue Mercury's beauty director wrote back from her personal email, on a yacht in Greece, with 2 questions about whether her store-level inventory was safe. I answered both. Credo's CEO called me from a hike in Tahoe and asked one question, which was, "Are you all right?" I told him I was. He said, "Good. Give us a day if anyone calls us." The hoteliers wrote back through their procurement teams. Saks's vendor team forwarded a copy of the original master agreement back to me with Section 9.3 already highlighted in yellow. I had not quit anything. I had locked. There is a difference my mother had never had to learn. Ooh. Monday morning, 7 o'clock. The Brownstone Kitchen. Matcha and the Tuesday edition of Beauty Independent, which I read in advance because Solange always sent it to me the night before. The phone on the counter buzzed face down. I had set it on Do Not Disturb except for Catherine Halsey, Geraldine, Solange, and my attorney Renford Whitmore. 7:14. The first call from Saskia's cell. Buzz, buzz, buzz. It died into voicemail. 7:21. The second call. Same. 7:33. The third call. Same. I poured a second cup of matcha. Geraldine, who had slept on the second floor pullout, came down the stairs in the same Rutgers sweatshirt. She kissed the top of my head once and refilled the kettle. "Let it run," she said. Across the river, in Dumbo, my mother and Saskia were already at the office. They had brought catering. I learned this later from Solange, who had been told to take a personal day but had ducked in early to grab her laptop. There were lox bagels from Russ and Daughters on the conference table, and a glass of pink champagne already poured at Saskia's place. Saskia sat in my chair and tried to open Shopify. The login screen rejected her email. She tried again. She tried my email. Without the YubiKey, the login required a hardware push she could not deliver. She tried Klaviyo. The screen told her her seat had been removed. She tried Gorgias. Same. She tried AWS. The console asked her to authenticate with a YubiKey serial number she did not have. She called Solange. Solange let it ring. She called the IT help desk, which was a contractor I paid named Rashid Wallace. Rashid had a one-page note from me, sent Saturday, that said if anyone who is not on the founder list calls Monday, you do not give them access. You forward to my attorney. Rashid forwarded. By 9 o'clock, the Sephora brand operations team had sent the first email. Per Section 9.3, please confirm founder is operating. I read it. I forwarded it to Renford. I drafted a reply that said yes, founder is operating, confirming directly, and waited. At 9:14, Catherine Halsey called me directly. Not the office, not Renford, me. Linnea, the Mercer Hotel, 12:30. I need to look at your face. Understood. I dressed in a navy blazer and the Cornell Olympiad pin I had finally taken out of the kitchen drawer 2 months earlier. I walked to the Mercer through Soho. Catherine was at the corner table, an iced coffee in front of her. No notebook open, no laptop. She is a woman who has been in the beauty industry for 31 years, and she has the calm of somebody who has watched 100 founders try to break things and another 100 watch their families break it for them. "Tell me," she said. "My mother and sister attempted a hostile takeover of a single-member LLC without my consent. Friday. There is no legal basis. Section 9.3 holds. The showcase is still on. With me." "Good. Because we printed your name on the banner Saturday morning." "You did not need to do that. You could have waited." "Linnea, I have watched founders' families try to put their hands on a Sephora launch for 30 years. I do not wait." She slid a folded paper across the table. It was a short list, typed, of every event press contact she had personally briefed. Glamour, Allure, WWD, Beauty Inc., a time stringer. 6 names. Each name had her handwriting next to it. "We will only confirm Linnea Voss." She had drawn a small star next to one of them. "I am ahead of you," she said. "I see that. One last thing. There has been an RSVP from a Saskia Voss. We accepted it. For forensic reasons." "Yes." "Good." I walked back through Soho to the train. At 5 in the afternoon, Solange texted me a single screenshot. The screenshot was a photo of the Dumbo office at 4:45. My mother and sister were sitting at the conference table. The Lox bagels had dried out. The champagne flute was half full. Saskia was on her phone scrolling. My mother was looking out the window. 14 vendor calls had come in. They had answered none. They had opened nothing. At 6 in the evening, Geraldine left a quiet voicemail from Jersey. The lab had received a call from someone identifying themselves as Mr. Saskia Voss's representative, asking when product samples could be picked up. Geraldine had said no calmly. Geraldine had then called the front desk security at her building and added Saskia and Marlene to a do not admit list. She had emailed me the building's incident report by 7. The incident report read like a hotel security log. 2 female adults attempted off-hours pickup, identified as not authorized, escorted from premises. The building security had taken photographs at the desk. The photographs were attached. The photograph of my mother showed her in a cream coat and a navy hat. She was holding a clipboard she had brought with her. The clipboard had nothing useful on it. It was a prop. Power was never the office. Power was the paper my name was on. They were sitting inside a room they could not turn on. Tuesday afternoon, the brownstone kitchen. Geraldine had pulled out the lab partnership contract and laid it on the marble island next to a yellow highlighter. We were going through it line by line. Geraldine never highlighted anything she had not already explained to me 3 times. "Saskia called me Saturday night," Geraldine said. She did not look up. 11:38. "She used your mother's number, which is how I picked up. She asked if I was going to be available for a lab handoff. I told her my contract is personal to Linnea Voss. I told her there is no handoff. She said she would have her mother send me a check for my trouble. I told her my trouble cannot be settled by her mother." I hung up. I made a note in my black book. Saskia attempted lab interference Saturday 23:38. Geraldine refused. Documented. Wednesday, my sister posted an Instagram story from the corner of the Dumbo office. The caption was in her wellness influencer cadence. "New chapter. Founders evolve. Trusting the unfolding." She had filtered the photo until the river behind her looked like Tuscany. Within 24 hours, 14,000 of her followers unfollowed her. By Thursday, the comments under her last 3 posts were people writing the same 5 sentences in different ways. "You stole her brand. You don't know what a patent is. Where is Linnea? Stop pretending. Your mother is on camera in the background." I did not screenshot any of it. I let other people do that. By Wednesday afternoon, Solange had quietly forwarded me a folder she had been maintaining for 5 years. The folder was called Marlene Voss, Vendor Contact Log. It contained 28 separate incidents in which my mother had emailed Florea's vendors directly. 3 were copies of emails my mother had sent to ShipBob's customer service in 2021, asking to redirect a small case of product to the Greenwich house. 2 were emails my mother had sent to Clavio in 2022, asking how to get into the email list. The Clavio support agent had politely declined and CC'd Solange. Solange had filed each one. Solange had never told me. Solange said in her note attached to the folder, "I am sorry, I thought you knew. I thought you were letting it slide. I had not been letting it slide. I had not known." I told Solange that. Solange wrote back 2 words. Got it. Thursday at noon, a small competitor in the clean luxury beauty space, a brand I will not name out of respect for the founder, sent me a private message on LinkedIn. I heard, "If you ever want a job, the seat is yours." I thanked her. I declined. I asked her where she had heard. She wrote back, "Industry Slack. Your sister is in 7 different rooms trying to source a chemist this week. The chemists are all texting each other." I had not realized how big the room was. The room is always bigger than you think when you have been alone in your kitchen for 9 years. Thursday afternoon, around 3, the doorbell rang. My father, Ronald Voss, was standing on my stoop in a gray suit, holding a manila envelope and a paper bag from the deli on Court Street. He had not come to Brooklyn in 4 years. I had not invited him. He had texted me from the corner 3 blocks earlier. "I am almost there. I would like 5 minutes. I have something for you." I let him in. I poured him a glass of water. He did not sit down. He set the envelope on the kitchen island. He set the deli bag next to it. He took 2 breaths. "This is from 2017, he said. "Your mother sent me down to collect the garage rent. I have it. I did not cash the check. I do not need an answer today. Use it." I opened the envelope. Inside was a check for $14,000, payable to Marlene Voss, signed by me, dated September of 2017. It had never been deposited. The endorsement line on the back was empty. My father had been holding it in a desk drawer for almost 8 years. Dad. I knew it then. I should have spoken then. I should have spoken in 2007 when your mother put Saskia's photo above the staircase and yours in the drawer. I should have spoken when she sold your bottles to the women at St. Catherine's. I should have spoken at Thanksgiving in 2023. I am sorry. I am going to start speaking. I'm starting with this. He set a second envelope on top of the first. The second one is the paperwork for the house in Greenwich. The house is in your mother's name. It has been since 1991. There is a mortgage. I am the co-signer. Your mother is not aware that I have already filed for separation. I told her this morning. I am moving in with your Uncle Pete in Cleveland on Monday. I am not asking you to take a side. I am telling you what I am doing. So that whatever happens next, you do not also have to manage me. I looked at him. He looked older than he had on Father's Day. His shoulders were lower. His hands were on the edge of the marble island, and they were steady for the first time I could remember. I nodded once. I did not hug him. I did not cry. I poured him a second glass of water. He drank it. He left. The men in my family also have hands. They just use them slower. My father had been keeping a receipt of his own for 8 years and 4 envelopes, and he had finally found the door. Saturday, the 5th of July, 11 in the morning. Geraldine forwarded me a second envelope from her grad school friend at Aphelion, the full chain. There were 9 emails. There were 6 attachments. 5 of them were Saskia's. One of them was a forwarded note from my mother to Saskia, sent from Marlene's church board AOL account, dated October of the previous year. The note said, "I told the girls at the prayer group your line is going to be in stores next year. They are very excited. Tell Aphelion to hurry. My mother's name was on the from line. Her signature block was beneath. In Christ. Marlene Voss, Outreach Committee Chair, St. Catherine's of Greenwich. It is a particular sort of vertigo. To open an envelope and see your mother had been complicit in your sister's patent theft in writing, signed under a verse from 1 Corinthians. I called Renford Whitmore at 11:15. He answered on the second ring. This is willful misappropriation, he said. We file Monday morning, civil, trade secrets, common law fraud. We file the cease and desist on the podcast. Saskia's last 3 episodes quote your formulation language. We file a DMCA notice on her published consultation deck. We name Aphelion as a co-defendant for receiving the proposal. We do not name your mother as a defendant. We name her as a co-conspirator. That is a different legal posture. It hurts more. Hurt how? Discovery. File. He filed. He emailed me the case number Monday morning at 9:14. Voss versus Aphelion Beauty et al. He had attached a small note at the bottom of the email. I added an injunction request. I want to stop them from using your name anywhere by Wednesday afternoon at the latest. By 10 on Monday, my mother had called me 11 times. By noon, she had called 22. At 2, I picked up. I had not picked up the phone for her in 9 days. Mom, Linnea, you need to come to dinner. Saskia is humiliated. The neighbors are asking. You need to fix this. The neighbors will be fine. Linnea, I hung up. She drove the Range Rover down to Cobble Hill that afternoon. She rang the doorbell. She rang again. She rang for 22 minutes. Then she called 911 from the stoop and reported that her daughter was having a mental health crisis and would not open the door. 2 officers arrived. I let them in. I showed them the deed to the brownstone, held in the Voss family trust, with me as sole trustee and sole beneficiary. I showed them an email from my GP at NYU Langone confirming my annual physical from May with a clean cognition screen. I showed them the case number for the federal complaint, freshly filed that morning, in which my mother appeared as a named conspirator. The senior officer looked at my mother on my stoop. She had her hand on her chest. He shook his head once. Ma'am, you'll need to go home, he told her. She did not go home immediately. She sat in the Range Rover at the corner of Court and Bergen for an hour. I watched her from the second-floor window because I was raised by her, and I will always know what she does when she is trapped. After an hour, she drove away. My mother had tried to give Saskia my desk. Now she had tried to give the state my mind. The pattern was the same. Give what is mine to anyone but me. The next morning, I drove up to my GP at NYU Langone for an unscheduled cognition screen. I did not need one. I did it anyway. I wanted a second clean screen, dated after the 911 call. The doctor was a small, calm woman who had been my GP since 2019. She read the news brief and put it down. She did the standard screen. She asked me how I felt. I told her I felt focused. She wrote me a 1-paragraph letter, sealed, with her practice's letterhead, and slid it across the desk. The letter said Linnea Voss presented for an unprompted second opinion cognitive screen on the 8th of July. She is fully oriented to person, place, time, and situation. There is no evidence of any cognitive impairment. She added a postscript by hand. Tell your mother to come see me if she wants to be sure. I will see her on Tuesdays. I drove back to Brooklyn with the letter folded inside my Cornell pin box. I never sent it to anyone. It is still in the box. Some letters you carry without needing to deliver them. Tuesday, the 8th of July, the week before the Sephora brand showcase, Saskia posted a video to her main Instagram grid. She was barefoot on the patio of my mother's house in Greenwich. The lighting was honey orange. She read a script she had clearly drafted and redrafted. I want to honor my sister's journey. I want to apologize for anything that may have been misinterpreted. I love Florea, and I love her. The video lasted 48 seconds. The comments were in within 2 minutes. Where is the patent receipt? Are you the founder? Or not? Does your mother know how to spell trademark? Saskia deleted the video at hour 9. The screenshots were already in a Reddit thread by hour 10. Wednesday morning, Renford and I met in his office on Madison Avenue. Geraldine flew in from Newark with a printed-out laboratory journal. We laid out the case. The civil complaint was at $4.8 million in damages. Aphelions' general counsel had already called Renford twice. We were going to settle the Aphelion portion fast. We were going to grind on Saskia. Beauty Independent ran a quiet news brief on Thursday morning. Florea Beauty files federal action against influencer Saskia Voss and Aphelion Beauty, alleging trade secret misappropriation. Alleged conspirator Marlene Voss named. The brief was 3 paragraphs. By 11, it was the top story on the Beauty Independent homepage. By 2, it was the second story on WWD's email digest. By 5, my mother had stopped answering her cell. Sunday the 13th. My mother called me from a number I did not recognize. She had borrowed a friend's phone. I picked up because I needed her to say the thing she always said before she lost a fight, so I would know how she would behave Wednesday at the showcase. Linnea. Her voice was strange, strained. The voice she used in the back office of the church board when she had been outvoted. You can't kill your sister's career. She killed my patent. There are receipts. Saskia took the phone. She was crying. Actually crying. Not the camera kind. Linnea. I did not know it was yours. The document she gave me did not have your name on it. Saskia. The patent number is at the top of every page. The page header says US 12/143, 608. That is my patent. The patent has my name on the cover sheet. There is no version of the file you copied that did not have my name on every page. We have the file with metadata. We have the printer log. We have your hard drive backup from May because you used Floria's company iCloud to save it. I have the file. I have the metadata. I have the hash. A long silence. My mother took the phone back. The strain in her voice was gone. She was switching to the strategy I knew best. Then we attend the showcase together, Linnea. As a family. We move on. You bought a ticket? Saskia's name is on the invitation list. Saskia's name is on the invitation list because she emailed Sephora brand operations 3 days ago claiming founder status. They accepted her RSVP for forensic reasons. There is a paper trail. Sephora has it. I have it. Catherine Halsey has it. The press list has it. She inhaled. She let it out slowly. Linnea, we are your family. You are. That has never changed. What has changed is that I am not pretending anymore. I hung up before she could speak again. I sat at the kitchen island for 10 minutes and did not move. Then I called Solange and Geraldine on a 3-way. I told them what I was wearing Wednesday and where they should be standing and what I needed in my left hand and what I needed in my right. Tuesday afternoon, I drove up to Ithaca for the day. I did not tell anyone. I parked at the chemistry building on Cornell's campus. I walked the long hall on the 3rd floor where my old undergraduate lab had been. The lab was being run by a new associate professor I had not met. I knocked. She let me in. I asked her if there was a young woman in her group who needed a fellowship and did not have one. She named 3. I asked her which one had a mother who had told her she had no head for science. She named 1. She said, Aria Beltran, Jr., transferred from Buffalo State, will be here on Friday. I wrote a note for the professor to give to Aria on Friday and left. I did not need a clean room to remember why I had started. I had needed Ithaca on a Tuesday. Sometimes the founder needs to drive 4 hours each way to remember she still has hands. For 60 years, my mother had been collecting other people's invitations. On Wednesday, I was going to let her sit inside one she could not address. Ah, when hahe. Wednesday the 16th of July, 7 in the evening, 175 Spring Street, the Sephora flagship in Soho. The room had been cleared and reset for a closed-door brand showcase. There were 150 buyers, 18 members of the trade press, 12 Sephora corporate staff, 6 security officers from Sephora's NDA-managed events team, and a small standing bar that served only sparkling water and one specific kind of espresso martini that Catherine Halsey liked. I wore a black knee-length dress that I had chosen because it had no logo and good pockets. The Cornell Olympiad pin was on my left lapel. The single jar in my left hand was the first stable peptide formulation we had made in 2016. The single sheet of paper in my right hand was Sephora's Master Vendor Agreement, page 9, section 9.3, highlighted. Renford was standing 6 feet to my right with a brown envelope. Geraldine was at the bar, drinking the second espresso martini. Solange was at the door with a guest list. At 7:03, my mother and Saskia walked in. My mother was in cream. Saskia was in white again. They walked the room slowly. My mother stopped at 3 press members and introduced herself as the matriarch of Floria Beauty. Saskia stopped at the glamour stringer, who I knew Catherine had pre-briefed. The stringer smiled politely and did not write anything. Saskia walked to the press cluster and squared her shoulders the way she had practiced in the mirror. I had watched her practice in the mirror at 17. I knew the posture. "I'm the founder of Floria Beauty," Saskia said. Her voice carried because she had been a podcaster. "I am pleased to officially launch the new chapter." A photographer's strobe went off. Then another. That was step 1. The lie. Catherine Halsey walked onto the small raised platform at the front of the room. She did not look at my sister. She looked at the buyers in the front row. "Good evening. At Sephora, we host a brand showcase for one founder a quarter. Tonight, we celebrate one of the most rigorous launches in this flagship's history. 320 doors at rollout, 2 granted formulation patents, 9 years of independent product development. Please welcome the founder and chief formulator of Floria Beauty, Lina Voss." She extended her hand to the side door. I walked in. The room turned in one motion, like a flock of birds. That was step 2. The evidence. My mother turned to the press cluster. Her smile did not collapse. It widened. "There must be confusion. My daughter Saskia is Florea. We have a transition agreement." Catherine looked at her. "Mrs. Voss, the contracted founder and sole member of Floria Beauty LLC is your other daughter. There is no transition agreement on file with Sephora. There is no provision for one under section 9.3. That was step 3. The denial. Catherine pressed a button on the small remote in her right hand. The screen behind her, the one I had not noticed until then because Catherine had positioned it slightly off-center, lit up. The first slide was the incorporation certificate of Floria Beauty LLC, New York State, dated October of 2015. Sole member, Lina Voss. The second slide was the cover sheet of patent US 12,143,608. The third slide was the cover sheet of patent US 12,201,915. The fourth slide was a clean rendering of section 9.3, sole founder continuity. Catherine did not say anything. She let the slides sit for 8 seconds each. That was step 4, the stronger evidence. Renford stepped forward from his position 6 feet to my right. He carried the brown envelope in 2 hands. He walked toward Saskia. He spoke clearly enough for the press cluster to hear. "Saskia Voss, pursuant to Federal Rule of Civil Procedure 4, you are served. This is the summons and complaint in the matter of Voss versus Aphelion Beauty et al. You are advised not to make any further public statements about Floria Beauty tonight. You are advised to retain counsel." Saskia held the envelope. She did not move. Her hands were trembling. She tried to open it. The flap had been pre-cut so the documents would slide cleanly. The first page was the caption. She read her own name on the caption. She read the next defendant. Marlene Voss, alleged co-conspirator. She read the damages, $4,800,000. That was step 5, the final reveal. Saskia did not speak. My mother snatched the envelope from her. She read the caption. She read her own name. She read the figure. She read her own name again. Her mouth opened. No sound came out. The strobe went off again. That was step 6, the silence. My mother turned to the crowd. She had not lost a public room since 1988. She did not understand that a room could be lost. She turned to the press cluster. She stole this from me. I raised this brand. I introduced her to the Sephora woman in the first place. Catherine spoke from the platform without raising her voice. Mrs. Voss, this is a private retail event. Security, please escort. 2 security officers from Sephora's NDA-managed team stepped to my mother's elbows. One of them said very softly, "Ma'am, please come with us." My mother began to lean. She had spent a lifetime knowing how to make a room remember a sound. She lowered herself to one knee, then to the floor. Saskia ran to her. The strobe went off twice. A photographer from WWD looked at his shoes, then took the picture anyway because that was his job. That was step 7, the loss of control. If your hands are shaking right now, that's the part of you that knows you have a door of your own to walk into. Listen to that part. Not loudly, not on a stage, just in the paper you sign and the door you close. Subscribe if this story reached you. The next chapter of mine, and maybe yours, starts the moment we stop asking permission to own what we built. I stepped to the microphone. Catherine moved aside. I held the jar in my left hand up to the light so the press could see it. This is the first stable peptide carrier I made, June of 2016, 9 years ago. My mother told her neighbors I had a hobby. The hobby has 2 patents now. Florea was built on one rule. The name on the paper is the name on the lab coat. Thank you for the rollout. I set the jar down. I stepped off the platform. The room clapped. Not the polite clap of a brand event, but the long, slow clap of a room that had watched something it would talk about for a year. Catherine took the platform back. The presentation moved on. That was step 8, the consequences. Friday morning. Beauty Independent's cover read, "The Quiet Founder, Lina Voss, Sephora, and the Power of a Single-Member LLC." The Madison Avenue flagship lease was signed at noon. Florea's rollout to 320 doors began on the 5th of September. The end cap display went up on the 12th. The flagship store opened on the 18th with a private breakfast for 80 guests and a soft launch line at the door that wrapped to 68th and Madison by 10 in the morning. I attended the flagship's opening morning on the 18th. Catherine Halsey cut the ribbon with me. The line stretched 4 blocks. The first customer through the door was a woman from Queens named Margot, in her 60s, who told me she had bought my product at St. Catherine's 8 years ago and had been waiting for a real store. She asked if she could hug me. I said yes. We hugged. The flash from the press's cameras went off 6 times. I did not mind. She had bought from my mother. She had not known whose face went with the jar. Now she did. My father moved to Cleveland on a Sunday in late July. He sent me one text from the road. Proud. He sent a check for $100 to the Florea Quiet Chemistry Fellowship the same week. He sent another every month after that. I did not cash any of them. I framed the first one and put it on the wall of the flagship behind the formulation desk. I framed the rest in stacks and put them in a Florea storage room. He kept sending them. I kept keeping them. Saskia lost 38,500 followers in the first 10 days after the showcase. 3 of her brand partnerships canceled in the first 72 hours. A wellness app she had been about to sign with paused the contract. A vegan cookware brand she had been the face of for a year quietly removed her photos from their landing page. By August, she was off Instagram. By September, she had reopened the account as a private grid for her old yoga clients. She kept that arrangement quietly. Aphelion settled with Floria Betrayal for $2.6 million. Saskia signed a permanent formulation gag order. My mother signed a consent decree to never access Floria's vendor or financial systems again. My mother withdrew, with the gentle pressure of 3 other board members, from the outreach committee of St. Catherine's. 2 of the women at St. Catherine's who my mother had sold my early jars to wrote me letters in September. One letter said, "I am sorry. I should have asked who made it." The other said, "I am not sorry. I bought a good jar at a fair price and your mother told me she made it. That is her problem, not mine." I framed the second letter and put it next to the first one. They are both true. I had been sold by my mother, and I had been bought by neighbors who did not know whose hands had been in the jar. The truth is allowed to be both. The brownstone deed had been mine for 2 years. The Voss Family Trust had named me sole trustee in 2022. My mother had never been a beneficiary. She moved out of the Greenwich house in October. The mortgage went into her name only. I did not pay it. I did not offer to pay it. I sent my father a quiet check on his birthday for the cost of a flight to Brooklyn whenever he wanted to come. He used it twice in the next year. The Florea Quiet Chemistry Fellowship endowed 4 full BS chemistry scholarships a year at Cornell, $200,000 annually. The first recipient was a woman from Buffalo named Aria Beltran, whose mother had told her she had no head for science. She wrote me a letter. I wrote her back. I framed her thank you card and put it next to my Cornell pin. I built a company quietly for 9 years. My mother thought silence meant submission. It meant inventory.